Hey guys, it's Treetop out here loading up a batch of Great American Classic, a 45 ACP. And I've been using this Lee Auto Drum powder measure, and I tell you, this thing's got a lot going for it. So I thought it was time to make a video about it. This powder measure is fairly new for Lee. I think it came out in the 2016 catalog. And I just noticed that it's actually shipping with the Lee Classic Tour Press kit. So another good reason to get some information out there about it. Lately, I have been obsessed or tinkering with powder measuring and ways to get better performance. And that's where this comes in. And also, you see, I've got this swing arm over here for mounting powder measure right over the press with a funnel. This is a Hornady lock and load. So this is something I've been working on for a while. And I thought it was time to do a video about this thing. We'll break this thing down. I'll show you the anatomy of it. We'll talk about the good, maybe the not so good. We'll talk about accuracy, and I'll actually demonstrate accuracy. I'll cover adjustment, and I'll give you my thoughts along the way. And also at the end of this, I'll give you some tips to get great performance out of any of your powder measurers. So if you're familiar with Lee powder measurers, for a long time, Lee has had this Lee Auto Disc powder measure, which has done a pretty good job for us. And they also have had this Lee, they call it the Perfect Powder Measure. And this thing is shockingly accurate considering that it's blow molded parts. I mean, this thing really puts out some great loads. And it's very consistent. But what I think they've done here is created a hybrid. They've taken the Auto Disc, which is pretty accurate. I'd say it's between plus or minus 0.1 grains. And they've combined it with the style of their Perfect Powder Measure and created this. And this thing, in my testing, is actually, if this is accurate to plus or minus 0.1 for a total range of 2.2, I would say this is a total range of 0.1. So they've done a really good job with this, getting this accurate. They use the best of both of those. And for 35 bucks, honestly, I don't think you can beat it. So not a whole lot to talk about on the hopper here, but basically, this is the same hopper they've used on some of the other powder measures that Lee's made over time. It's got the valve on it where you turn it to close, like I did there. And I guess if I have a criticism of the hopper itself, is it doesn't fit very snug in the aluminum housing of the rest of the measurer. So it's just gravity holds it in there. If you were to lay this down or whatever, it would just fall right out. Now the bad thing is, if you happen to bump it or lift it off, you know, make a mistake and pick it up while the valve is open, you're going to take a little powder shower. So an observation about this and the other Lee powder measures that escaped me before is if you look at this Hornady powder measure, they put a baffle in there. You just kind of drop it in and it settles to the bottom. You pour the powder on top and the powder just kind of filters around it. And what that does is it keeps the overall changing weight of an ever decreasing powder amount from putting varied amounts of weight on the filling chamber or the measuring chamber, so that you don't get a compacted load when it's full and a less compacted load when you're near the bottom. So it stays constant all the time. And I always thought, wouldn't that be kind of a neat idea for, you know, something to add just one step more for the Lee powder measure? And then I realized that they kind of have it built into it. They have a small opening here where the powder feeds through, and that goes into a larger staging area here. So basically, the baffle concept is built into the Lee powder measures. Something that escaped me before. Thought I'd share that with you. So the next thing I want to cover is this little item here. Let me take this off. So this is a disconnector that Lee built into this thing. And the idea is that you have to reset it between each charge. You come up and you take a charge, and you see I rotated there. And then if I was to come up and charge it again without resetting it, you see it won't let me double charge that case. So that's a safety feature. And then you have to reset it manually like this, and then you can take another charge. In this case, now I have a double charge. So for me personally, that's not really a feature that I need. I'm used to using this Lee Autodisc, and it doesn't have a disconnector on it. It charges every time you raise the RAM. And second, I use a little light right here so I can actually see inside the case. But overall, I felt like it was probably a greater chance that I would forget to reset the button and create a squib with a primer only. So with that said, that's how I feel about it. That's a choice you'll have to make. But what I would like to do here is I'll just show you how to take this off real quick. So you just get in here, there's a screw right down in that notch there. Try to let you see what's going on here. Then you just kind of have to lift this up out of there, kind of pull it up out of there. It sticks in that notch there. And then you have to work these ears around these grooves here. See how that's put together there. And these ears ride in this groove here, and that's what does the disconnect function, along with this little item here. This one you just have to pick up. You just have to unsnap it, take that out. That's part of the disconnector market. And just hang on to those for later. So now that I got this out, I'll show you. I still got a case in there. So when you run it without this on there, you just have to make sure you have it in the engaged position. See, it's not rotating there. You just have to make sure that it's all the way pushed that way. And I guess you could turn it on and off if you wanted to. I don't know why you would, but just by manually moving that in and out of position. So that's it for the disconnector. I didn't feel like it was something that I needed, so it's easy to disable or take off, and then it works just like a perfect powder measure if you're used to that. So I'm going to take this apart, and to do so I'm going to make sure the drum is closed, and I'm going to start taking some of the powder that's ready right up in here out. So that it doesn't spill when I pull the drum out. Yeah, it looks like I got it. There we go. So to take this apart, pretty simple. You just unscrew this nut right here. I guess it's actually technically a screw because it's got the threads on it. Take that out. Here's what that looks like. And here's what the drum looks like. With the drum removed, let's take a look in here. Got a couple of gears in here. This is what converts the linear motion into rotating motion. We've got right up in this corner here, what should be the top of the cylinder, we actually have a silicone wiper that's replaceable. You can actually change these out and order fresh ones if you need them. And what's unique, what this actually does is when the drum rotates, it wipes off the top here and gives you a nice clean measurement. And also by using a supple wiper rather than just two metal to metal edges, you don't get any grain cutting like you would on, say, just the metal to metal type. You know, both are okay, but this will actually accommodate the grain and not actually cut the grain. And what that does, it makes for a much smoother operation. And in my estimation, a little more accurate. Whenever you cut a grain with one of these drum style powder measures, usually that load is off a little bit. So another thing I'll show you here is inside the drop tube, they've actually put what looks like a Teflon surface in there, or an insert. And what that's going to do is make a nice, smooth, static-free surface that allows the powder to fall cleanly all the way down into the case. And last but not least, you see that there's a groove cut here. Now this groove is supposed to collect powder that gets in between the drum surface and the housing and it just works. Instead of falling out, it's supposed to work its way into this groove, and the back and forth motion of the drum is supposed to carry those grains into the tube so that so it doesn't fall out. That portion, or that part, has mixed results, and we'll cover that a little bit later. Okay, so the kit comes with 2 drums. Comes with a pistol and a rifle. The rifle obviously has larger capacity. The pistol has a much smaller capacity. They each have these, they come with these keys. The keys are removable. So if you get a setting that you really like, you can store the key off to the side so you don't make an accidental adjustment, and just swap these out each time for you want to set up that same load again. So that's kind of a nice feature. In addition, you can write or mark or put a piece of tape on here. You can actually write right on this, or you can, put a label on it or whatever on this flat spot here to just say to identify how you have this one stored. The rifle one comes with a little plug that you can take out and push in here and convert the rifle to a pistol. So if you just wanted to use these on pistol, you can turn the rifle one into a pistol. A little hard to get back out if you do push it in there. So make sure that's what you want to do. You can get them out by running it all the way through and sticking something underneath it to pop it back out. I've done that before. So Lee also makes a kit that has 4 of these, 2 rifle, 2 pistol. I think it's 90453, and it sells for about 15 bucks. So really economically, you can set up a whole bunch of these and leave them set up for loads that you do repetitively. You don't have to make the adjustment again. For a pretty low price, you can probably outfit your whole setup for 15 bucks or 30 bucks. Okay, now for the bad news. So they call this a drum powder measure, but I'd really kind of call it a cone because of the shape. But here's what happens. With the really super fine powders, the powders can work down here and come out the bottom. Whereas if you have a true drum style like this one, all the gravity effects are straight down. There's no gravity to kind of cause the powder to work out the sides. So these don't tend to leak much. But this one with this cone shape here, the powder will slowly get between, the housing and the drum and kind of find its way down. Now I showed you the groove in there. It's supposed to eliminate that. And in most cases it does. But with the very finest powder, I've got some H110 here, if you can see that. Now this stuff is basically dust. I mean, it just sticks to everything. It's kind of hard to handle. It's tiny. Little teeny tiny particles. You can't even feel them on my fingers. They're so small. So with this powder here, that's the one downside. It will slowly migrate down out of here, and it'll kind of land on top of your die holder here. So that's, like I said, that's the downside. It's still accurate. It doesn't change the accuracy at all, but just you get this annoying leak that you can't seem to stop. Now they tell you in the instructions that you can put a piece of paper in here, sort of. Their solve for leakage is to do a paper drag method. That's where you just put a piece of paper in there and you just tighten it until you get a drag, sort of like a feeler gauge. So you get this slight drag there. Now what I found is it didn't matter how I adjusted. I could crank this all the way down, and if you do crank this too much, this nut over here, tighten it up too much, then you don't get really good free travel. It starts to catch and bind a little bit. And you want to get that full travel underneath the hopper down into the dispensing portion. So I've tried it with CFE pistol. You can see this is a little bit coarser, still a pistol powder, and it doesn't leak at all. So I just want to make you aware of that if this is something that you're thinking about doing. If you've used the Lee Perfect Powder Measure and you've used it with H110, guess what? It leaks the same. So if that's your point of reference, if you've already used it and you've had good service out of this with the powders you're using, I think you can expect the same performance out of that, out of the auto drum. Now for adjustment. Adjustment is pretty straightforward. If you are using this for pistol and you're using the expander die, Lee's expander die, and / powder through die, in this case I've got the expander die, and then on top of that I have an extension riser. This is called the auto disc riser, and all it does is it just raises this up to be clear of the other dies a little bit. But if you're using one of these, you adjust this particular die for the belling of the case mouth that you want, which is its primary job, is to bell the case mouth. So you just do that adjustment to get the right amount of bell on your case mouth to accept the bullet, and this works out perfect. When you tighten this down, the adjustment's just right. And I'll show you what that looks like here. There's 2 points you can be aware of. If you have the drum out, notice that this little 45-degree gear is horizontal, and when you go all the way to the top, it stops at the horizontal. That's a total complete throw right there. Like I said, there's not the dimensions are preset on this, so for pistol there's really no adjustment needed, but you do want to verify that you're getting good throw on it. And also pay attention to this little notch right here. See this guide? You don't want to come up and contact the housing. If you do, it'll kind of rock off to one side, but you put extra stress on this mechanism and it's unnecessary. So I've swapped this out. This is a Russian setup for Mosin, and this is a Lee rifle charging die. This is a universal die. This is the longer version. The longer version fits from 223 all the way up to 300 Win Mag, I guess. So I'm going to put this in here just to show you that this one actually has to be adjusted. So if you look at this seam, if you look at that gear, you see I've kind of loosened it here just to demonstrate, but you see the gear's not getting full travel. I'm not coming up into this notch here. So to adjust that, it's independent for each case, but you just start winding it down till you get a good full throw. Actually, it looks like I hit it just right on the money there. Anyway, pretty easy to adjust. I just want to show you that with the charging die, you do actually have to adjust it so that you get a full travel on the cylinder. I thought we'd try to show some accuracy here. I'll take some powder charges and we'll weigh them and just take a look and see how we're doing. I've got a primed 45 case, and I'm going to use that as a vessel to move between the press and the scale. I'm just going to make sure I tear on that case so I get a good 0, and then everything else, all the powder will be all that we're weighing. I like to run the press through its cycle, just like you would be when you're actually doing the reloading. This is unique powder. It's a flake powder. And I'm looking for about 5.5 here. Let's bounce around a little bit, 5.56. Unique's a good powder, but it doesn't meter particularly well. So this is a good test for it. .56, 5.57. .56. Let's do one more. .56. Okay, so you can see that's pretty accurate. I mean, they say most of your weighing devices and everything are accurate within 0.1, plus or minus 0.1. So, you know, that's even in the range of the scale here. It's not a very expensive scale. But, so, you know, I'm happy with that. That's, what were we off? We ranged between 0.56 and 0.57. We had one throw up 0.57. So that's pretty accurate in my book. Okay, you guys, the last thing that I want to leave you with is my tips and tricks based on trial and error to get the best, most accurate powder measuring out of any type of your powder measures, mechanical powder measures. And also the whatever you're using as a conduit to get the powder down to the case. So my theory would be this, that most of these powder measures are inherently accurate. But some of the things that we blame on the powder measure is that we get, for whatever reason, we get sticking and a little bit of powder left behind after we throw a charge, and we don't get a complete throw down into the case. Then the next time we take a charge, the powder comes down and knocks excess. So we get a light load and we get a heavy load and vice versa. Now, some of the reasons for this could be that we didn't get all of the oils or whatever from manufacturing or storage inside these powder rifle through dies cleaned out. Or we've got static electricity that's causing the powder to cling to the sides and not fall all the way through. Or maybe even humidity. So here's my advice. First off, whenever you get, whatever you're using, everything that touches the powder, to include the cylinder in here, you can see that on this Hornady powder measure, or in here, make sure it's clean. Make sure there is no oil residue from anything on there. And I like this brake clean. This stuff dries really fast. Some of your plastic parts you might want to be careful with and just use alcohol, but you want to, everything that touches the powder, particularly from the cylinder that you measured in and the through tube down into the case, needs to be clean and dry with no oil or anything like that on it. And so on top of that, after you clean everything, I like this graphite dry lube. This is made by Blaster. This is a product at Home Depot. You can get this from them in the store. You don't have to order it or anything. And what I do is I take a Q-tip and I spray this on a Q-tip, get it good and wet, and then I coat all of the surfaces, everything. So this is a pistol rotor or drum for the Hornady powder measure. So I'm going to spray this off camera so I can demonstrate this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to coat all the surfaces that could come in contact with the powder. And that forms a barrier, so if you get any static electricity or anything like that, the powder just won't stick to it. It's also a dry film, so then you just let that dry. So it's going to keep, probably keep the humidity from forming as well, I would think. I'm just, that entire cylinder. And the dies. Everywhere the powder is going to have to flow through. We're just going to coat that so that none of that powder hangs up on it. And you'd be surprised the powder will just flow right through that without trying to hang up at all. Any of these areas here. Put a light gray coat. Now, on your powder measures too, swab up in there. Anyway, like I said, you'll see that powder just flows right through. Just a couple of video notes. As always, I'll put links to the things that we talk about here, the primary things that we talk about, in the description box in the bottom. Just click the Show More button, and it'll open up, and you'll be able to see the links to stuff if you're curious. Well, guys, that's all I got for you today. I hope this video was helpful for you, and I hope if you're thinking about picking one of these up, you got some tips and know what to expect. Key to happiness is managed expectations, knowing what to expect. So anyway, if you like the video, click the like, share it, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and guys, be safe out there.